Hello, I'm Jen Wilson, Senior Programmer. Welcome to this Film Independent Presents Festival Visions Edition Q&A. Special thanks to our lead sponsor, the HFPA, our media sponsor, KCRW, our virtual screenings partner, Vision Media, and to the NEA. Today, we're spotlighting a feature film that played in the 2022 Bentonville Film Festival in Bentonville, Arkansas. And with us to do this Q&A from that festival is their film curator, Drea Clark. Welcome, Drea.
Welcome back, Drea, you mean. I'm here. I'm excited. Drea. I'm thrilled. Thank you for having us and for getting us to bring this favorite film. It's a real delight. Bentonville was thrilled to play this in our documentary competition last year. As you mentioned, it has had a whirlwind festival tour, and it's actually releasing soon. So I hope anyone who enjoyed the screening today will help spread the word of mouth. And yes, so delighted to have filmmaker So-Yeon with me from Liquor Store Dreams. Hooray!
Hi everybody. Thank you, Drea. Thank you, Jen. This is amazing, and I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we're psyched to have you. For anyone that might know, So's and I's paths crossed at the LA Film Festival previously, so it's sort of a double festival journey for us. Happy to have come full circle. And I know she, like many of you who watch this, are deeply rooted into film independence. So hopefully it will be an inspiration and as well as a good view for all of you. So everyone just watched this, they're familiar with it, and it is very clearly an incredibly personal project. It heavily features your family, your father, as well as friends and yourself. It began as a short film called Liquor Store Babies. I'd love to hear about that. A lot of people look at expanding their shorts to their features. What did that process look like for you?
Well, I think previously I was just making a lot of short films, interning at various places, and then I stumbled upon visual communications armed with a camera fellowship, which required you to make a 5-minute short film. And after applying for like 3 years, I finally got in with this concept of I wanted to make a short film about me and my dad. I always thought the liquor store was such a fascinating place that I said, okay, well, given the time constraints and like just budgetary restraints as well, let me just do this, something personal. And that became Liquor Store Babies, put it out. I think we went to a couple of festivals and people kept saying, oh, you should make it into a feature-length documentary. But to me, I'm like, going from a short to like a 90-minute feature-length documentary is a hard task. So I said, let me think about it. It wasn't until a year later where I really saw a possible ending to my film. And that was the scene that you saw in the film where Danny reopens a store from Best Market to Skid Row People's Marketplace. After he rebranded that and reopened, I think I saw an inkling of what my film could possibly be. And so it was at that point that I was like, okay, let's start this journey. And so that took about 3-4 years.
I think that's really helpful insight because there's a lot of documentarians, and you've also been a programmer. There's a lot of features that you can watch and think, this is really interesting and could have been a great short. And then there's other shorts that maybe they just don't have enough weight to them. So it's great to have an idea of that arc ahead. And I have more questions about that actually down the road. But I'll say, going back to your closeness with the subjects in this, and I mean both the people, but also the locations, like the Koreatown and Los Angeles and the communities represented in it. Was there a different kind of burden for you as a filmmaker in presenting those people in that place?
I think I just wanted to do our story and my community justice. So as long as it felt pretty true to life, that I wasn't sugarcoating anything, as well as only seeing it from my perspective, because even though I'm, a part of the Korean community, there could be many different perspectives. So I think I try to get a range, but also be true to who we are. And so I felt like it wasn't a hard task. I think the harder task was my parents asking, well, we're so ordinary. Why would you want to film us? And I think you find so many extraordinary stories in ordinary things. And I think it's in that approach where even if you think it's ordinary, it's actually pretty special to film.
Well, with that, was it difficult convincing your dad especially to take part? So much of this really interrogates your relationship with him and then also his role in in his world.
I think initially he probably was really fascinated that I was pursuing this. And I think he thought more of it as a joke. So he's like, just do your thing, do whatever you want, and we'll be part of it. As deeper we got into the story, I'm sure he kind of got an inkling of what the film could possibly be. And I would like to think that it was his love for me, that is why he participated so much and wanted to engage in this conversation. And I feel like for him, he didn't really have expectations, that he didn't realize it would go to Tribeca, that it would be shown in, so many different people. I think initially it was just like, do your thing. And then, if it doesn't work out, you can do something else.
Right. It's probably the equivalent of like, yeah, you can record some of our family vacation or whatever, especially because the younger people are recording all sorts of things these days. Was there anything that you were surprised to learn about him or his perspective throughout this journey?
I think most of the filmmaking process, I used it as a way to get to know him, because of course I couldn't ask these questions without the camera. I think there's a level of awkwardness when you want to just have a frank conversation, but to make it a little bit lighter, I think filming it helped a lot, and to get to the nitty-gritty of his origin story, how he even got here, his perspectives on, America and things like that. I think I just learned so much about why he is the person that he is.
I think that many people could benefit from staging a fake documentary filming just to ask the people in their lives questions that they would not normally be able to wedge in a non-awkward way. That's great. Because it also comes apart, and he's really candid with it too. Like he obviously trusts you, and building that sensibility is a great nod to your relationship, but it's also part of your job as a director of knowing that your team and everyone in it are in good hands. With that, you are also part of the storytelling. And again, both in representing yourself and representing Danny and your father and Mark, like there's all of these people in there that are giving a lot, but you're also probably getting so much from them that's helpful and wonderful, but maybe doesn't fit the story you're doing. What was it? You nodded to the idea of the rebranding of Danny's store, but did you have like a divining rod going through? Because documentary a lot of times can just shoot so much, and so much is wonderful, but you need it to be cohesive. What was your through line, both in the filming process and then the editing stage?
I think, of course, initially because I wanted to make my favorite movie, I just listed everything that I wanted to see. And that was kind of my North Star. Of course, things evolved, but I think I had to just adapt so much. And of course, the biggest thing was 2020. We never expected the pandemic. We never expected all the protests after George Floyd's death. Like there's so many things that we were all grappling with as a community and America at large, that we kind of had to go there. And of course, because it is a documentary, it is based on our lives, that everything did tie in so much, and it revealed a lot of the things that we were already kind of aiming for in the story. And I think it really deepens everything, just because I set up the story in a way where we were going to go there, but then I think 2020 really forced us to face it head on. And I think that was the thing that we were thinking in mind, that in telling the story, even through the editing process, of course, we were trying to figure out what is the true story here. And it took many reiterations, like again and again. We were just editing for several years. And every reiteration, I think people were like, oh, but like, we kind of don't know what it is. And I think that was the big question. Like, how do we state the question in the first 5 minutes? And it was really this generational divide that was truly felt. And then I think with that in mind, we really just had to focus and like have everything tie back into that.
Right. And the generational divide is a great sort of, like you said, North Star in terms of keeping everything on that same track. And, you have such an intimacy because of the closeness with the subjects. But as you just mentioned, this also very candidly gets into a lot of social injustices that were occurring as you were shooting. was it always, you sort of hinted at that, but like, was it always of kind of equal importance to you? Because obviously like the historical context of the markets in Korea, like in Koreatown, sorry, are deeply tied in this. There's such an entrenched history there. Was that always in your head that you wanted that incorporated in the story?
Yeah, because I think I wanted this film to, I'm as a cinephile, like I've been watching every types of movie out there, and I was like, oh, I haven't seen this type of film before, and I kind of wanted to be a personal doc, but also pretty educational, because initially I really wanted to make something that people could learn from, and this was my way of learning about my own history. So I think the hard part is with documentary rules. There's so many rules. Like either it's a personal doc or an educational doc, or talking head doc. Like I think for me, I had to figure out how to make my own genre in a sense, and mesh everything that I wanted to see together and just make it make sense. So I was like, okay, well, how do I also make it personal, but also do a history lesson, like a very mini history lesson? Because these were the big questions that I was wondering. Why are there so many Korean people owning liquor stores, especially predominantly in South LA? And then, therefore, and so I think that's, I had it in mind. And I think working with my editor, Christina Sun Kim, we just had to figure out, where does it work? Where's the best part to put in our journey? And I think that was just the hardest part, just trying to make it make sense. So it comes off seamlessly, that people aren't being like, actually, why is that a professor there? And that was one of the big things that people pointed out. They're like, oh, if you have a professor there, then it kind of is like a third party. It doesn't become a personal film anymore. And I'm like, well, she's still tied to me in a sense, because this is my journey to learn. And I needed a professional to really to really help me learn and kind of break down the history. Because even as the narrator, even though I'm doing the voiceover and like really navigating the story with the audience, I can't provide that context for everybody. So yeah.
Right. And you're part of what you're learning it. It would be false if you were also like, so Webster's dictionary says, yeah. Now it's interesting because you probably went through so many iterations of the edit. Was there anything, any moment or insight that you really loved, but you had to let go of because it didn't end up serving this final picture and the themes that you're going after?
Not that I really loved, because I think for me, I was like, oh, you have to kill your darlings. But also I was trying to be pretty loose and not get too attached. But I went through this CAM fellowship where Nanfu Wong was my mentor. And she suggested one time this radical idea. She's like, why don't you put the fight of you and your dad in the beginning? And I was like, what? I was like, wow, that's like a really, how do I make this work through the edits? And we tried it. We flipped the entire film, tried it out. But for me, I thought, well, you don't really get to know the backstory or anything if we go, start off with the fight. And I do feel like maybe people will just walk out because like, who is this person? And I think for me, it was always about the journey, even my discovery of the liquor store history and everything else. Like I needed to go through all the context to really understand the fight a little bit more. And so we shifted back. We were like, let's put it somewhere in the middle, set it up a little bit and go from there.
That's great. I mean, Nanfu Wong, obviously, a brilliant filmmaker.
Genius.
But those are the kind of things you probably gleaned things out of that exercise, even without moving that sequence earlier, which is why I think mentorship in filmmaking, especially, can be so important. I always recommend people reaching out and connecting and getting whatever input they're able to. So there's a pop culture element as well, and I think like especially establishing like the sense of place and time. What was your guiding light in those selections?
It was mostly so I can make my favorite movie, that I was like, and I think this was how much is too much, right? Like how much do I cram into this story? Because there's so much context, there's so much history to set up for the audience. And I felt it was necessary for me that I wanted to include all the movies that I've watched, the movies that showed liquor store owners as well, to really set up how we were being perceived, and then go through there I guess, set myself up as the filmmaker and the things that I'm really inspired by, and eventually the film that I want to make.
Right. Were there any historical elements or footage that you couldn't get a hold of or couldn't get cleared?
So many. I can't pinpoint one just because there's just so many iconic footages that I would have really wanted. But luckily, that's why I really like documentary, is that there's always an alternative, that I don't have to stick with one thing, because I feel like so much of creating a film, you just get hung up on this one thing. If I don't get this one thing, like I won't make it, or it won't be a good film. But I think it's the adaptability that really helped ease my anxiety about even filmmaking. And yeah.
That's great. And so I mentioned at the beginning, Liquor Store Dreams is becoming available. It's releasing May 26th.
Yes.
And so hopefully the people that watched, if they enjoyed it and want to help get the word out, that's wonderful. That's how people discover them. It's helpful there. But what's next for you?
Initially, actually, I'll also pinpoint that we will have our public broadcast on
that's
PBS
right, you're on
POV.
POV.
Yeah, we'll be on POV July 10th. So if you feel free to watch it on VOD as well as PBS. I love the options and accessibility of it all. Initially, I thought that before the doc, I would be writing a narrative feature. And so now that I made a feature doc, I'm like, let's go back to that narrative and figure out what kind of story that can be, and really try to learn more about narrative, just because narrative is so different than documentary, that I really want to hone my skill there. So I'm really excited. It's a very different journey.
You're flexing your storytelling muscles. Well, we're delighted to do this. Thank you for coming out for this. So thank you for everyone watching, for joining us for Festival Visions. High five to my collaborators at Bentonville Film Festival, at Film Independent, and another thank you to the National Endowment of the Arts for making this all possible. Have a wonderful day, evening, life.
Thank you, everybody. Love this.